Straight Life by Art and Lori Pepper. This is episode 10 of Straight Life. Episode 9 was about Central Avenue, the Club Alabama, and Lee Young. I interviewed Lee in 2014. This is what he said. I started the band that Art was in after I left Lionel Hampton. Well, when I first quit Lionel's band, Lester left Basie and we formed a band out here. Jimmy Rolls happened to be in Seattle, Washington, and he came down here to be in the band. Now, I don't want to make this a black and white thing, but at the time we're talking about, it was an exception to have a white guy in a black band. Only we didn't say black, we said colored band, colored players. Music has always been the same to me. It never had any color to me. Lester and I took our band to Cafe Society in 42. That's in New York City. Then our dad died. That broke up the band because I was very close to the family. I came back home to LA in the latter part of 42 or early 43. I told you about the Jimmy Rolls thing because for some reason it seems like every band I had, I always had a white player. I don't remember where I heard Art, but I just believe it might have been at a jam session because that's all I did all the time. I kept my drums in the back of the car. They had all kinds of jam sessions on Central Avenue. It was against the union rules to play them, but I did it all the time. They must have fined me 100 times. I'm certain that's how I met Art. And when I got the gig for the Club Alabama, he was one of the first people I thought of. Because when you build a band, you think of the first chairman. And Art did play lead alto. We had 3 saxes, 1 trumpet, 1 trombone, and piano, bass, and drums. We had to play 2 shows, and we played for dancing. The arrangements we had were by Gerald Wilson. Dudley Brooks and Nat Cole also used to write arrangements for us. I don't know if that was when Art was with the band or not. Nat always wrote in pencil. That'll let him know. Gerald Wiggins wrote for the band and played piano. We used to call him Wig. I've been all over the world since this and talk about how times change. Art was just one of the band. We didn't know any different down on Central Avenue at that time. It wasn't about whitey this and whitey that. It was about good musicianship and people respecting one another for the talents that they had. I don't know of a single incident that occurred. We never thought in the terms that they seem to now. Maybe white people can't go now on Central Avenue for some reason or other, and that reason I don't know. I remember when Buddy Rich first came here with Artie Shaw and Vito Musso. They used to always be down on Central. Harry James, he used to be on Central Avenue jamming. That's where everybody hung out, everybody. They had so many little clubs. Next door to the Alabama was a Mexican restaurant, and she had a piano in the back, and piano players used to go in there, and I'm speaking about Art Tatum. Adjacent to that was the Downbeat. Within 2 blocks, they had about 6 clubs where musicians were working. And so, we used to take long intermissions and go across the street and listen. We'd go next door and they'd come over to hear us play. It was like a West Coast 52nd Street, but you never really heard of Los Angeles that much then where music was concerned because everybody thought all the jazz and all the better jazz musicians came from the East. The writers for Metronome and Downbeat used to segregate it. They had what they called West Coast jazz. They thought it would be different. I think that's because the East wanted to really be up here and have the West down there, whatever that was. Music is music. Either you can play or you cannot play. And I've found that music is an international language. One of the best bands I ever heard was a band in Buenos Aires, in Argentina. But let me tell you this about Art. At that time, I think everybody in the band was young, but at 17, Art was the youngest. And about musicians, you can always tell when a guy is going to be great because the potential is there. And the only thing that needs to happen is for him to get out and play. It's like my brother Prez. I know how much he could play at 17. And I think that what happens is that they could play snakes at that age, but they have not mellowed into the type of style they're going to play. I think that's all that happens after that. When a musician is young, every idea they have, they try to play at once. They're not necessarily any better. Art probably wasn't any better at 27 than he was at 17. He probably didn't know the instrument any better, but he knew what to do with it. He knew not to overplay. You learn to pace yourself. But if he was not able to play all those notes and hear all those things, then he would never have been able to create a style. He was destined. Nobody at that time was taking a 17-year-old and putting him into a band. The nearest I remember is when Harry James had Corky Corcoran. He played tenor. At that time, he was the child wonder. I think he was 16 or 17. But he was never destined to reach the heights as a jazz player that Art reached, because you knew then, in hearing Corky play, that he wasn't the instrumentalist, the technician that Art was. Stan Getz was very young too, but Stan, he copied a lot. Stan copied Prez. Now, I never did hear that in Art. I lost track of Art for a long time, and then he did a lot of things on his own. When he went with Benny Carter, that's understandable. He went from 9 pieces to 14, 15 pieces. He went from 3 saxophones to 5. That was an education in itself. And then to go on and join Stan Kenton, that's beautiful. Art was talented, but let me tell you, I never would have hired him if I'd thought he didn't have the right personality. If it's going to be one of you and a lot of another race of people, you could have a problem. I didn't just take Art blindly because I thought he played so well. I knew he'd be able to get along with the guys. And I knew the type of guys I had in the band. They would only judge him by his playing. He was quiet the way I remember him. As a matter of fact, the whole damn band was quiet. That was a quiet band, but it was a good band. It could play. The Club Alabama had had many names. When I came out here as a kid, I used to be a singer and dancer, and it was one of the first places I worked. It was called the Apex. That was in the 30s, when all the movie stars used to frequent the club. So it was really a big business. And the same man who owned the Apex wound up owning the Club Alabama. How can I describe it? You had to buy your tickets at a ticket window, and then you'd go in, and they had tables all around the dance floor, maybe 3 deep. And they had a balcony, and right on the railing, they had tables all the way around. I think you could get 900 people in there. And there was a long bar, maybe 80, 90 feet. And all the hustlers and pimps, they stayed at the bar to fire their shots. So it was like something you see in the movies now with the gangsters. But these guys were harmless, guys that gambled. No guns or that type of thing, and always shirt and tie and hats and coats. The dance floor was about 50 feet. You could get a lot of couples on the floor. And the show, they had 8 or 10 chorus girls. Oh, yeah, that's why I always took the job, We always had a shake dancer, chorus, comics, and a headliner. And you couldn't get near the place on Saturdays and Sundays especially. Most of the black people would be there on weekends. And all during the week, the clientele was white. That club was a nice place to work, but it all came to an end with the change of times and with the people moving out. I think it was the influx of transients. There was a lot of that. During the war, I went on the staff at Columbia Studios, but Central was really jumping then. It was almost like Broadway. After the war, the clubs started closing. I don't know if it was hard times or what it was. I never really thought about it, but I observed it happening. As a matter of fact, it's been years since I've been there because it was such a drastic change. If you've grown up used to something and it deteriorates, The downbeat turned into a dump, a lot of winos hanging around, and they started holding people up and mugging people. It was just the times, I guess.